So I caught Kevin a little bit off guard with this one because generally our process of podcasting is we'll come up with a couple of conversations we want to have. We'll lay them out. Our guests will kind of line up, but I want to run this one a little bit more organically, and here's why. I'm going to go over a couple of different subjects today. Thought processes kind of going through my head. The first one we're going to talk about is 24th of May. We're going to have the Ken Ronnie Coleman on the Layman's Lab, right? So we had Matt Fawkes, which is, he's the owner of Metroflex here in Tampa, or Metroflex Tampa, it's in Brandon. But, we collaborated and we've been speaking about this for a while. So we've got Ronnie coming down for the second coming, basically at Metroflex. Grand opening, basically, yeah. So, the first time he was here, Matt didn't really expect the amount of people that came in, so we're being a little bit more prepared of how we're going to do it this time. So Ronnie Coleman is going to be here on the 24th of May, 11 to 1 p.m. He's going to be doing meet and greet, right? After that, he's going to break for lunch, another 2 hours in the afternoon, and then he's going to be judging, right? So again, if you like deadlifting, right, and you've watched any of the Ronnie Coleman deadlift videos, Ronnie Coleman will be judging a deadlift contest. So if you ever want to stand in front of greatness, arguably the greatest bodybuilder who has ever lived, right? And you want to stand in front of him, in front of this icon, and have him assess, and you pull that weight and have him go, yeah, buddy. Yeah, there's your opportunity. And then once we're done with the deadlift contest, we've got Ronnie for a 2-hour podcast, which will be shot. It'll be recorded, but it's going to be shot in front of a live audience. Yeah, that's cool. So we've got VIP tickets on sale. We've got backstage tickets on sale where you can kind of sit in and you can watch us kind of break down and start asking questions to Ronnie. We'll take a couple of questions from the audience so everyone can be involved. But the reason I bring this up and kind of how I want to run this is I want to run through the different mechanisms that we're putting down as a podcast. And, I always find it important that people need to know where we come from, who we are, right? So the reason I'm laying this out is that's a big event for us. So, we started this podcast a couple of months back. I think we're 18 episodes in right now. Little known fact when it comes to podcasting, most people don't make it past episode 5. Right. Yeah. So I didn't know that. Most people who start a podcast, right, they don't make it past episode 5 because it becomes there's the anxiety of the commitment of doing these things weekly, right? There's people who do them multiple a week.
Oh, I think it's scary just being on video.
Yeah, it's having the being able to reassess where you are and what you're doing, to be able to take a step back and say, you know what, I'm going to put myself out there. Yep. And I'm going to have people judge me, and I'm going to talk about things, and you're putting yourself in the modern stance. So it's about having that understanding and putting it out there. So most people don't make it past episode 5. Yeah. Like and I don't think it's because they don't have valuable things to say. I think a lot of people who want to start an endeavor like this, the first thing that you kind of do, and this was mine, I'm going to talk about through my process, right? So long before I met Kevin, I always had this idea of starting something. I didn't know if it was going to be a podcast, if it was going to be a website, but I wanted to kind of get as much information as I can out there. Yeah. And when I looked at the podcast, one of the things that comes in, you're like, well, everyone has a podcast. I can tell you, name me 5 people who have a podcast, and I'll tell you won't name one, right?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of any.
Yeah, the second thing that people talk about is that, the second thing that people kind of have a fear about is, what are we going to talk about? What am I going to fill the air with? And one of the things that had been really, I'd say the most fun part about this is it's just talking for 2 hours.
I actually do know someone. Her name is Kristen. I worked with her, how many years ago? I forget. 10 years ago. She's tried to start one in the past. I think it kind of was with other people. It wasn't I just fell apart maybe, and then started her own. Yeah. And I kind of want to plug Kristen because her and I have inspired each other over the years. And she decided, she went all in. She's doing it one by herself. She brings guests in. She's doing a great job. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
And again,
but she lives in another state.
Yeah. So you go into a platform like Spotify, you can find every subject on earth, right? About people talking about different things. But I think for me, and I'm going to have Kevin give his insights in this. For me, one of the reasons that we decided to start a podcast was I really want to have engaging conversations with people who have the same insights and lookouts that I have, people who do things that I find interesting, people who have had experiences that I can feed from and ask questions about, right? So a learning experience. And also people who have a differing opinion. You know, you want to bring someone on who doesn't necessarily share your same viewpoint. I might have a bit of a singular view of the world, but I believe that ingrained in most of us, at least, you know, you talk about the couple of bad apples in society, and there always will be, but for the most part, most of us want the same thing. You want happiness, want safety, and you want that good sense of community, and you want those things around you. And I think all of us want the same thing. How we're going to get there, and our ideologies and our reasonings may be different, but the more we can engage in conversation, where we can sit down and we can express our differences without judgment, and insights into why do you think that way? What's your reasoning behind it? You know, without being defensive, without being judgmental, without trying to convince someone that they're wrong, or convince someone that this isn't the path to take. That's truly what we're trying to do here. We want to have conversations with people who have different experiences, whether we tie into them or not. And we've got a guest coming on the next podcast, which is Friday for us. It's Wednesday now, and this is a lady who she's really, really well ingrained into this community. Right, she owns a vegan restaurant. So first things first, she's vegan, completely off the reservation for what we see as our path line. Right. However, why do I want to bring her in? Well, we went through a couple of different variations, because I've always wanted to sit down and have a very earnest conversation with someone who has a completely different diet ideology to what I do, right? Knowing that I don't think there's anything as such as a wrong diet. It's find what works best for you. And bringing her on here, she's one person, the reason being, she's super successful in business. She's well-versed in the community. She used to have her own TV show, right? And also, she's very willing to sit down and have a non-judgmental. She doesn't judge me for how I eat. I don't judge her for how she eats. But I'm truly interested into sitting down and finding out from Danelle and her husband, Jeremy, and finding from them, how do you navigate on a daily basis? Whether I believe that veganism is the best way, it doesn't really matter. It's the best way for you. Right. And, you know, and I want to ask questions, and some of those questions I'm not trying to catch someone out. I'm not trying to spin around and try to swing them, but I really genuinely want to know, how do you navigate these problems? Yeah. Because I have a lot of respect for people. I think I try and always, you know, we've had conversations about this. It doesn't matter what someone else does. If someone does something that is difficult, if someone else is doing something that requires more of themselves than just the average day life, I have so much respect for you. I don't care if you're a vegan. Right. As long as I'm not trying to shove onto you what I believe, and you're not trying to shove onto you what you believe, and you're willing to sit down and we share ideas and insights, man, let's start and have a conversation. And that's truly what Laban's Lab is. Yeah. And Danelle will be the first guest we have on, which is truly someone which is out of the realm of our understanding. Yes. Something we don't truly follow, but is going to bring us some insights into it. Not to question them, not to decide, you know, we can sit there. She's not coming here to change my mind on veganism. And I'm not sitting here to tell her carnivore is the way to go. But to sit down and speak to someone who lives this lifestyle and understand, how do you navigate it? What is your day-to-day? Yeah. So in this episode, I want to kind of dive into the different reasons and why these things are important in society. Right. So we've got Ronnie Coleman coming on, and before we go into that line, is on Kevin, on your side. So what have you found uniquely beneficial to you about having these types of conversations?
There's a lot that I would share. I'll start with I think the reason probably a lot of people don't survive past 5 episodes is just the lack of commitment.
Yep. I probably agree with that.
Personal take. It's scary. It's difficult. We're talking about subjects that people all have opinions on, and whether or not we're right, that doesn't matter. We're just sharing our take and our perspectives on what's worked.
And you're putting it out in the world on the internet, where everything is forever.
And that's not going away, right? So if I ever run for presidential office, something's going to be held against me, right? I don't have plans to do that, but it's the point that it's out 100%. There forever. So I think that scares people away. But I look at it like this, like, I have a story to tell, so do you.
Yeah.
And for me personally, like the shit that I've been through, the mess that I've had, and overcoming a lot of things, like, you know, the past 12 to 24 months for me have been really challenging and trying, but I needed those things.
Yeah.
I needed that to become who I am today. And I think everybody's life, and I think what's cool about the internet is that you can go find help with what you need. And as someone who spent thousands on talk therapy, I would much rather listen to a Jason and Kevin to help me overcome my shit than to go to pay my talk therapist and spend all this money. Now, I think there's a place for it. I think there's it all matters. It all is relevant.
It's all relevant.
But honestly, like there's a guy that I follow that probably woke me up to the journey that I'm on.
Yeah.
And it was me just listening to someone else's perspective. And to be honest with you, the guy triggered me in the beginning. Like when I first listened to him and what he had to say, he actually triggered me. And I'll just share his name. His name's Sean Whalen. He's out west. There's a little bit of a controversial person for some people, but personally, he did trigger me for a while, and then I just kept leaning into what he had to say. My wife followed him for a while, and it allowed me to realize, but had I not been on the internet, had I not listened to some podcast stuff, like, you know, where would I have really woken up as fast? I think the whole idea for me with this podcast is simply, we benefit from this. Like I think you and I have become that much better in the last few months of doing this, just based on the conversations that we have, the information that we're putting out there. I think it's attracting people to us. You know, I think there's a lot of like manifestation going on in our world for this, like the Ronnie Coleman thing that's coming, and I'm excited about what's going to be on the backside of that. But I think, you know, what I have learned through all this, and I go back to the question about, like, you know, other people coming onto this as guests, like Danelle Stevens, wonderful human being, wonderful person, successful in every way. You know, we're all trying to figure it out. Yeah. Right. And we all have a way to, like, I think for me, hearing other people's ways of doing things, even though it's not how I align, there's value and knowledge in that, because you can take something away from everyone.
It's perspective, man. It just gives you a new insight, right?
And I think in the past, like in my youth, I would have been very judgmental towards people that I didn't agree with or align with. I would have been defensive towards someone if they attacked me. I've gotten over a lot of that stuff. I'm working through like a number of things. I mean, honestly, even one thing that happened in the networking meeting this morning, it was playfully fun, like where people were kind of taking jabs at one another. Yeah. I just think back to myself in the past, I would have been overly defensive, you know. And one of the things I'll say that I got defensive about when I was fat and out of shape, in my head, I was still the athlete. I wasn't that out of shape. I wasn't that fat. So if somebody made fun of me for being overweight or out of shape, I'd be like, fuck you, I'll take you on. Yeah. And it's that defensiveness because I was in a broken place. Yeah. You know, and I think when you start to overcome these things, you start to really dive in, it allows you to open up and see other people's perspective and ways that are different from what you believe and do, and appreciate what they do. Yeah. You know?
And to be clear on that is, you know, and we're talking about mutually respected and respectable conversations, right? Is as I mentioned before, is we had the opportunity of bringing on different people in the vegan world, right? But realistically, and I'm going to say this outright, Danelle was the only one that was legit. And when I'm saying legit, she's not trying to get a spark out of everyone. She doesn't go around telling everyone she's vegan. Right, she owns a restaurant that's vegan, but she doesn't run around, start her sentences with "I'm a vegan." She doesn't have vegan tattooed to the side of her head, right? As some people that we've seen.
I mean, she's pretty transparent about it, but I get what you're saying.
So, and the reason being that is I'm going to be very clear about this, right? The same thing happens with people on carnivore diets, right, and on vegan. What happens is there's a portion of the population that will latch onto something like this, and it becomes more of a cult ideology, right? I am a vegan, therefore I am better than you, and I will tell you how good I am, how much better I am, and I don't care what you do, and what you're doing is wrong, right? And you have people on the carnivore side like, meat's the only way, there's no other way to eat, this is the only way you can do everything, so, you know, if you don't do what we say, you're wrong, right? This is not what we're about. Yeah. What we're about is everybody has to find their path to happiness, right? That path to happiness is it's multiple factored, right? So in finding that path, man, if veganism finds you to happiness and you have a way to mitigate it, even though I don't agree with it. But then again, I'm not living your life. Right. You're living your life. Your life's, your requirements, what you want to get out of life, how you find your happiness, that's not the same as mine.
Well, there's people that knowingly eat like shit, drink, smoke, all that crap, and live to be 65, 70 years old, an unhealthy lifestyle, but they said, well, I lived my way and this is how I wanted to live.
Good for you.
Good for you. I don't agree with your lifestyle. I don't agree with your choices, but that's not for me to say or decide. That's up to you. And if you feel like that's helping you live a happy and abundant life, so be it. But like, that's just not what I want to do.
And again, is if we have a conversation with someone like that, is I'd like to dig into your life, right? Because again, I'm very interested into the mechanisms that all of us find to find that purposeful life, right? And if you're sitting with me, I find a lot of times reading comments on controversial figures, like I will not comment on bullshit. I don't have time. People who sit there and literally live on the internet, but I do find a lot of value in sitting down and reading alternate opinions, right? And there's a couple of things that have come up recently. I read a comment section of a guy who is massively against anything to do with marijuana, right? And he stated why he thinks it's bad. You know, let's lay out what he said, right? Let's say they legalize marijuana here in Florida, right? So the fear being, and this is what Ron DeSantis said as well. He says, so all the public areas are going to stink like weed, right? We're gonna put in a drug that's going to now alter the way that society operates. Great. So these are great points, and I don't disagree with him. You know, however, you can regulate that, right? You know, you shouldn't be smoking in public the same as you shouldn't be drinking in public.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong, but I found this person's viewpoint super interesting. And here's why. His viewpoint was guided on the fact that he was telling you everything bad, but ignoring everything else in our society that is way worse that we're okay with, right? So you're and this is the reason I bring this up, and the reason that I'm talking about the podcast today is I find it very interesting when we look at the political landscape, the left versus right, you know, what's up, what's down, and when you start breaking it down, you realize that both sides fundamentally, especially the sides that really throw the biggest balls of shit at each other, all full of shit themselves, right? And in this guy's argument, right, he's so against even speaking about the possibility of having a conversation about all aspects that he's so ideologically against it, right? But then when you mention and go, but alcohol, right? Alcohol is legal in our society. It destroys lives on a daily basis. You know, so what's the difference? No, and you know, and they'll advocate it's not the same. Instead of having a conversation about it,
right?
He kind of cuts off. Then you also realize that this person has a social media feed, and this goes for a lot, right? Their social media feed, they can only get comments from people that follow them, which means that you've created a bubble around yourself, that you're protected from anyone else's viewpoint that you don't agree with.
We consume that way too. A lot of people consume that way. They only fill their feed with things that they align with, which is different from the past, where when you had newspapers as your news sources, and when the news wasn't so biased, you were able to get altering opinions and differing opinions of other places. And in my opinion, it allowed us to be more accepting of others. And today, because now I have to like intentionally go outside of my way to get things that I don't agree with, to learn about other ways and perspectives, I think it makes us a more biased culture.
Yeah, which is and on that saying is that's also kind of where the problem comes in, is because we're not having this conversation. And I was saying to someone today that podcasts, long form conversations, change the dynamic of understanding the intricacies of each person, right, as they start speaking, right? Because you know, you can bullshit someone.
That's true.
Joe Rogan said this about bringing Kamala Harris, right? And I still stick with it because up until today, she's never done a proper, full organic podcast, right? It's, in my opinion, it's the reason Trump won the election.
Yeah,
is he was willing, and he on a love
and real,
and apparently his son Barron gave him the idea. He suggested
because he went on Theo Vaughn, Joe Rogan. You know, who was the other big one? I forget.
He was on with one of the Logan brothers.
Was he
Logan Paul? He did a podcast with them. The point being,
his son told him which podcast to go on.
He kind of directs him, and now here's the thing: is if regardless of your feeling about Donald Trump, right, he goes onto a podcast and he sits there for hours
with no teleprompter, no scripts.
Now you look at his administration, right? You've got JD Vance, who's absolutely phenomenal on a podcast, super relatable, right? Tulsi Gabbard, exactly. She's super relatable, right?
Sidebar, really quick, as a former military guy with JD Vance, there's a thing out there in the military world called the E4 Mafia.
Yeah,
have you heard of this?
No. Tell me.
So the E4 Mafia is there's a joke. A running joke in the military that the E4s are the ones that get shit done.
Yeah.
Because they're not privates, but they're not non-commissioned officers yet.
Yeah.
When they become NCOs, like sergeants and above, that's when they stop doing as much work. They're not the worker bees anymore. And traditionally speaking, the E4s get it done. So there's been this running joke, and I'm sure some military vets will correct me if I got that wrong, but it's the gist of it, right? Well, he was an E4 in the Marine Corps. I believe he was a Lance Corporal. Yeah. And there was, when he became VP, there's been some spoofs going around like, hey, that's some E4 Mafia shit right there. Yeah. Like, that's some cool stuff. Like, we got our VP as an E4. Yeah. You know, that's pretty cool. So anyway.
That's a good story. I like that. But on that set so you have these super relatable people that are willing to have long-form conversations, speak about their day-to-days, what they deal with. Yeah. There's no holds barred, right? And then you really kind of go, okay, so this is the real human being. And this is from an outsider standpoint, right? Again,
I have to believe, and this is just my take, the difference there is like you got a Donald Trump, a J.D. Vance, Tulsi Gabbard, all these people. Yeah. These are their true belief systems, and so it's easy to talk about what you actually have in belief systems versus someone who's a talking point person. But that's if you don't actually believe in all these things and these actual narratives, I think it's very difficult. And the other thing I did see, I forget the girl's name, she worked directly with Kamala Harris for a while. She said she has this like horrible nervous type condition when she goes in front of the live press or on a podcast. She becomes a completely different person and can't articulate thoughts and messages and whatever else. But behind closed doors, she's not quite that same way.
And I get what she's saying. I think that was a PR stunt. I think Kamala Harris is a deeply damaged person, right? I think she has some drug problems. I think she has some alcoholism problems. Sure. You've seen it come out, right? Yeah. It may just be the fact that she's been put in a hell of a position. How she got there, I don't really care. Yeah, but let's talk about the human being, right? Yeah. All of a sudden, you're taken from this to that. Now, it's the idea of being the president of the United States must be a nice idea, but you mentioned the pressure.
Oh, that's what I was about to say.
Right, the amount of crap that comes with that, right? Sure. So, do I blame her? She, hit a couple of shots before that? No, I don't. In the end of the day, she's a human being, and we should treat her as one, regardless of your feelings on them. You need to realize we're all people. And from an outsider standpoint, the way I see this, right, is when I look at it strategically, this is where the Democratic Party is falling down, right? They generally were the party that put forward candidates who are super articulate and relatable, right? Bill Clinton, go watch Bill Clinton.
Yeah, he was
right in the 90s and have a look at how he spoke and how he engaged and things he said. If he was a politician today, he'd be a Republican.
Agreed.
Right.
So would JFK.
So would Obama. Right. If you go listen to Obama in his first term, go listen to his first term. Right. He was against gay marriage in his first term.
Yeah. That's the thing with politicians. They flip-flop their topics and talking points often because you're seeing that now. Yeah. Like with the whole Doge thing, that's a big one. Like Obama and Biden, like they're the ones that started Doge.
It's been something that's been in the U.S. government for years. I mean, way she's something you cut.
It's legitimately, in my opinion, like it's all talking points for them. That's why I think people hate politicians so much, is because they do talk out of both sides of their mouth.
Yeah. But then you get someone like Donald Trump, who only has one tone and one volume. Right. He speaks one level. Right. This is why he's relatable to people, because the internet doesn't. You'll see people that constantly accuse him of lying. Yeah. Right, and he can exaggerate. The guy's a storyteller by heart, right? So he can pull things out of proportion, and you don't really know when he's joking and when he's serious, right? And he's super funny, right? But he's relatable, and he doesn't change his goalposts. Don't dramatically change, right? And from an outsider, again, being an immigrant in the United States, is from an outsider standpoint, with the Democratic Party, I feel is dropping down, because by heart, I'm not conservative, or I'm in both. There's certain aspects I can flip on both sides, which I think we all can. right? We're more centrist by nature.
I lean right, but I'm not far right. I don't there's things like, I don't care who you love.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, whatever.
But remember, you're leaning right.
Yeah.
Right. Today,
I want to be left the fuck alone, to be honest with you.
That's exactly
government
what it is.
Out of my life. That's why I love all the cuts with the government that they're doing. Like, we should have little to no government. I hate government.
Yeah.
I mean, keep us safe, keep us free.
Yeah.
That's it.
And
let us thrive economically.
So again, to the point that we're getting at, where the Democratic Party has fallen down, is they've lost. There's no message. Their message is don't be Republican. Their message is don't be anti-Donald Trump, but they don't actually have a story, other than the super left woke ideology, right? Yeah. Which, I read and this is, again, current issues, and I want to talk a bit more about current issues, and we're not going to dive too much into politics, because I don't really care what your politics is, I just care how you treat people.
I agree.
But it was super interesting to me. Do you know that the UK, Canada, Denmark, and I think a couple of other European has put a travel warning on the United States?
No, I didn't know that.
So they're saying if you travel to the United States, you could be in danger because of human rights if you're trans. Okay, so now let's unpack this. Okay, right? Because it's a very interesting topic point to me. Is okay. So what human right does a trans person have that I don't, or your wife does, or my wife does? What human right do they have if they come to the United States? How would they be treated differently to any other human being? What right is being taken away from them?
Well, I don't know.
None.
Fundamentally, for me, here's where I have a hard time. I think a lot of those folks are mentally ill and need help, and then they get taken advantage of by a system, right? And then they get pushed down a path. And I know that's a controversial opinion, but I don't care. It's my opinion. And my struggle is this: as a father of two daughters, if I see someone, like, I forget the general's name that was the old person over the health department.
I can't remember.
Yeah, that was it Levine? I don't know. I have no idea what his name is. Yeah, that dude. So if I seen a guy like that trying to walk into the bathroom behind my wife and kids, there's gonna be a problem.
Yeah. Like,
I'm sorry, you're a pervert and you need to be stopped.
Yeah.
Like, and that's just how I see it. And I think that's such a small. Here's the other thing. It's such a small percentage of the population across the world that are the trans people.
Not anymore.
And we're changing all these things over that.
Okay, so that's what I want to unpack, right? So look, just lay this down, right? So let's talk about Canada. So Canada issues a warning saying if you travel to the United States, your human rights could be in jeopardy, right? So someone who identifies as trans now decides to cross the border and they're coming to the US. Okay, they're going to get to border services. What is border services going to say to them other than the fact of, okay, cool, where are you going, where are you from, how long are you going to be? Or the same question they're going to ask me or you. Okay, none of those questions are going to change. When they get into the country, no one cares, right? Even here down in Florida, no one gives a shit if you're a guy dressing as a woman. No one. The real issue is what we're not doing is we're not giving special privileges to people in the population over and above the rest. That's what they're actually complaining about. Now, that's what I want to
That's not a human rights issue.
That's not a human rights issue. That's an ideological issue.
Special treatment. Yeah.
And what you're talking about is there is a sliver of the population, right? Genuinely, people that are born on two levels. First of all, people that are born with both genders. It's a super rare condition. I think it's 1 in 100,000. Right? It's super rare. Basically, what happens is you're born with male and female genitalia. It doesn't mean that you identify one or the other. It just means that biologically you could go. And generally what they do is they identify that child at a very young age, and then they apply hormone therapy to that child at a very young age to go one way or the other, depending on which one is the dominant version, right? And I might stand corrected. I'm not a doctor, but that's my understanding. The second level you have is, this is the same as people who have, there's a limb syndrome, right? So there's people whose hands, feet, part of their body feels so foreign to them that these people will go to a psychological place and cut their arm off. And if you actually medically treat them for that, they're actually better off mentally.
Yeah,
right? But we're talking about a very deep psychological issue. In the same sense, that psychological issue is in a very inherently small part of our population. Now, what's happened is, why use that very small part? Because that very small part allows to do what most governments want to do, and they want to create distance. They want to separate, divide and conquer, art of war. right? Create a problem that doesn't really exist. Create a problem that isn't really a problem.
I think the media has done that with our politics for the past 10 years.
Racism, politics, everything, right?
Well,
so,
go ahead.
And you create a split, right? Now, what happens is when they created that split, when you will give a portion of the population, now imagine this, just listen to the wording. All I have to do, right? Well, we're in March. All I had to do 5 months ago, all I had to do was just say the words to the right people that I am now a woman, and poof, I'm now a woman. According to the law, according to the federal government, according to, on my passport, that's all changed in the Trump's administration, which I agree with, right? But all I had to do is I simply had to state the words, and that's it. And now I could go as far as walking to a store in certain states in the US, and if that person doesn't treat me as a woman, I could take them to court and sue them.
Politics exhausts me. Like I'll say this. This is, if I'm being honest, this is one of my least favorite topics to dive into, just because it just exhausts me, because I don't comprehend how people can honestly agree with what they've pushed in the agenda and narrative over the past 5 to 10 years, and how it's gotten worse and worse, like from the left side. But what I was going to say, if you actually are a Democrat, and let's say you're one of the, like, a JFK era Democrat, so that's like a lot of my aunts and uncles, okay, and you fought for women's rights and equality and all these things that you fought for, and overnight you allowed men to cross over, to say they're women, to take your hard efforts around being a woman and them being in sports, like that whole sports thing was a big thing. Why would you not stand up and fight against that? All the shit that you fought for, and then all of a sudden overnight, like, you got these trans movement, and you're just allowing men to come over to basically take everything away from you. And now, like, you've got men that are going to compete in women's sports that obliterated female records, obliterated them. And like, there were some courageous women that actually fought against it.
Yes.
And I totally agree with what Trump did. But if you ask me, Democrats are fucking stupid. They missed the biggest window possible. They could have easily stopped that.
I agree, but I take a step back. I don't think they're stupid. I don't think any of them are stupid. I think.
I mean, yeah.
No, I know what you mean.
That was a set out of passion.
I think there's definitely a bubble syndrome, right? So, I've seen it in South Africa, right, and I've seen it in Canada. When I stayed in Canada for quite a bit of time, and I saw it there as well. What happens is, if the government is able to create a bubble, right, and this bubble doesn't bring any there's no alternate information coming in. They did this with COVID, right? So they're blocking.
They control the narrative.
They control the narrative, right? So once you control the narrative, then what happens is people are emotional by nature. It's the reason that
for sure,
the highest level of people that still support the Democrats right now have the lowest level of support they've ever had, right? Rightfully so, based on the positions they took. However,
well, it's because of stuff like, did you see I forget the girl's name. She's a Democratic candidate, or a Democratic person, I can't remember, called the Texas governor, who's in a wheelchair. He's been in a wheelchair for, I think, most of his life. Essentially, like, insulted him. I can't remember. She, like, I can't remember exactly what she said, but it's stuff like that.
But
where it's like,
but that's just politics, though. Politics is always ugly, right? And
but you're the party that's stood up for people and their rights and their disabilities and whatever else. But when it's not
let's be
going
honest,
your
that's
way,
not true, though.
I'm saying that's what their narrative has been. But when the tables turned and people said, we're tired of your bullshit, now you're taking off all the gloves and throwing all the dirty low blows.
Look at it from this perspective, right? So you'd think to yourself, and again, I'm not saying this on one side or the other. I'm saying this as a foreigner in the United States, looking at this from an outside perspective, right? Is, when you look at the two sides, and there shouldn't be two sides. It's two sides of the same bird. It's two wings of the same bird. So you also need to realize that it's a bureaucracy that overends and controls all of this. But that aside, right, is there's an ugly format of politics that has come out, and politics has always been ugly and it's been underhanded. The only difference now is, for the first time in human history, we have minute by minute updates, right? So I don't feel politicians can't bullshit at the same level they used to.
Yes.
Right. A politician used to be able to go on TV, say that cup over there is racist, and give a whole bunch of bullshit reasons. No one checks him on it, and then they forget about no one has the video except the news corporation that owns it. You never see it again. It doesn't go on the internet. Now what happens is it calls up in live. They can't bullshit anymore, and I think it's caught a lot of especially the old wing of the Democratic Party has caught them off guard, right? Because they used to be able to get away with it.
Yeah.
And as much as there's certain characters. So if you look at the Democratic Party, and there's a reason I'm bringing this up, right? You look at a guy like Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom, okay, is probably their best shot of a presidential candidate. Right now, I know what he's done. I don't like Gavin Newsom. I don't like what he's done to California. I don't like the fact that he flip-flops on all issues.
I agree.
What I'm specifically talking about is, you know what Gavin Newsom's done in the last couple of months? Since the election.
He's tried to side more with Trump, hasn't he?
No, he hasn't sided with anyone. What he's done is he started a podcast, and he brings in...
Is he still the governor?
Yeah.
He is still the
And
governor.
he has a podcast, right? And I watched a podcast with him and Charlie Kirk.
I saw that. I thought he went on Charlie Kirk.
It could be the other way around, right? But regardless of that's a bold move, right? And when you listen to him talk, like when he's sitting there, now here's the thing is, do I believe what he's saying? No, I think Gavin Newsom is an extremely good actor, and I think he can flip-flop on a... He holds a conversation...
Nancy Pelosi's nephew.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think he is.
He's super articulate. He speaks very well. I don't trust him for anything, right? But I'm listening to him speak there, and I'm like, you know what? If more Democrats took an actual... Instead of just saying it, and actually stood up for themselves. You look at a guy like John Fetterman. When Kamala Harris didn't want to go to Joe Rogan, he went on.
Yeah.
And then you listen to the guy talking like, he's really more centrist than anything else.
I think his neck he had a stroke or something, didn't he? So he's people perceive him to be a little bit of a loose screw, if you will.
He's different.
He's different. Yeah, but I know, as of recent, he's come out having a little bit more common sense for people, I think.
Yeah, and I think that is... I mean, Bill Maher made this argument a few weeks back. He said, realistically, their best chance for a presidential candidate right now is John Fetterman. Because he actually stands for something. He says what he stands for. He's relatable to people, regardless of what you think about him. You can call him a slob. He's more relatable than anyone else than a guy standing in a $5,000, $10,000 suit.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people that are starting to really resonate with that as a whole. I have a general overview of what's going on. I keep up. I don't know. It kind of exhausts me, and it's refreshing for me. Does Trump do everything that I agree with? No.
Does he do enough? Does he do enough that I go, okay, everything's running well? Yes.
But honestly, what I voted for him to dismantle it all, and that's exactly what he's doing, and I'm perfectly good with it. All this fraud, waste, and abuse, I just saw this morning, they found a $830 million contract for surveys. Yeah. Literally, a 10-question survey that AI could have done for free. Yep. $830 million contract that was set to go out this year.
Yeah, and that's one of how many trillions?
And I'm good with it. At the end of the day, get rid of all the waste. Get rid of all that.
Yes, the thing is, but... ask the logical questions, right? Because this is the thing that really hurts bureaucracy, is logic. Okay. Totally. Ask the logical question. Isn't it very convenient that at the point that Elon Musk is bringing out all of these things, that all of a sudden, out of the blue, there becomes these protesters who are now violently attacking anyone who owns a Tesla?
Which Bill Maher addressed that, right? Too.
And you look at the layout of it, and you're like, this is orchestrated and paid for. And listen, Pam Bondi's probably going to prove it's paid for, and that some heads are going to roll. Yeah. But the point being is, it's always weird to me that when it comes on the Democrat side, they're willing to take the point of violence at every single point.
Every time.
Let's do a comparison. When Anheuser-Busch came out with their support of Dylan Mulvaney, right, that trans dude, and they came out supporting. Right.
Oh, that was so stupid.
Now, here's what happened is I didn't see anyone burning down an Anheuser-Busch factory. I didn't see anybody attacking people who were drinking Budweiser. I didn't see anybody. All I saw was people who went, you know what? I'm going to take my wallet and I'm going to put it back in my pocket and I'm going to make a decision. Basically,
that's where they messed up, and that's where they pivoted.
And that's it. And how was that done? That was done organically.
Well, let me share perspective about that. That's a really good point. Okay. When I was in the corporate world, we were very strict with people about, let's say, for example, your kid's in a school play
Yeah.
And you wanted to come in and promote that school play by putting it up on a little banner, or let's say you yourself were in this play for your church or wherever you're at, right? And you wanted to promote it in the break room and say, hey, come to my thing.
Yeah.
And you wanted to put a simple flyer up. We were very strict and hard on saying no. And it's because as a company, they were very, they were not for you. They're not a pro-union company.
Yes.
Okay? They had, production facilities and drivers and all that kind of stuff. And they were not a pro-union company. And they would say, if a union representative would walk in the front door of that building, and they could at any given time, and they looked behind the counter to see that an employee had a flyer posted, they could legally say, I need to put my union flyer up.
Yeah.
And that's how they get their foot in the door.
Yeah.
Okay, so they would say no to those sorts of things. Okay, the other aspect of this is if I came in and I wanted to promote my religious beliefs, I couldn't do it. And so I think where my struggle with a lot of what's happening in the world today, we can talk about the NFL, we can talk about Anheuser-Busch, wherever, is like companies taking a side on these political views and beliefs. And to me, that's
throwing money in a big way at it.
It's a dangerous game. It's a really, really dangerous game. And it's like Anheuser-Busch, to me, learned the absolute hardest way, because you went out and you said, hey, let's have our trans person come in as an endorsement. Yeah. Well, who drinks beer?
Yeah.
Blue-collar, hardworking, right-leaning Americans.
Let's flip that around, though, right? So let's look at this from Anheuser-Busch's perspective as a business. Okay, so I have a product which is blue collar, right? Blue collar workers, hard guys, people who just got 18 hours of the job, and he has a Budweiser. Yeah. Okay, I want to now try and see if I can expand my horizons in this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and hit people who are part of the I don't know how many letters there are, the lesbian gay community, right? Trans, whatever.
I hear what you're saying, but you hurt your base.
No. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm saying someone in there, right, which was the marketing person, thought this was a good idea. But when you go down and you look at the marketing person, you'll find out that they went to a college, they're super left-leaning. Yeah. There's an underlying reason for the way they're doing that, which is what that's been happening for the last 50 years, is that you've started instilling these people in every aspect of our society.
Well, like in my personal opinion, and there's plenty of case studies to prove this to be true, like education system in the United States, specifically here, that's where I've been born and raised, but all the way through college is an indoctrination system. It's 100%. Creating, ideologies and beliefs. Like
ideologies, beliefs, sit at a desk, pitch up, get your paycheck.
Yeah, that's like in the boomer generation was essentially taught, because they had all the blue collar manufacturing jobs. Don't do what I did. Go to college, get a better job, be the boss. That's how they saw it.
That's not the truth.
It's not, because I remember interviewing guys with college degrees for driving jobs or even like plant jobs that were like, I don't want to sit behind a desk. I fucking hate it. Even me, like I have a master's degree level education. I hate sitting behind a desk.
It's not what you want to do, but it's what was driven into you. This is what you need to do be successful.
I thought going to college, I was going to walk out at $100,000 a year starting, and then I was going to be making $1 million in 10 years.
Yeah, but now break down.
None of that was true.
Colleges are institutions. They're businesses, right? They're not. If you think Harvard, regardless of how long its lineage is, if you think Harvard is anything but a business, right? I think they're worth $16 billion, right?
They're
they get subsidized by the government. People pay a shit ton of money in there, and then when you go read the courses, there's some of these courses I don't even know what they mean. What do you do with the course?
I don't want you to graduate, because the longer you stay in my school, the more money I can make off you.
What am I going to do with transgender studies?
Nothing.
What am I going to make money with?
I'll give an exact example of this. My bachelor's of science is in organizational communications, and I have a minor in business administration. I was told, I was a college athlete, okay? So as an athlete, I had to declare a major by my sophomore year. Yeah. I think it was by the end of my sophomore year, I had to physically declare a major. I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. I just knew I wanted to play baseball. Yeah. That's all I knew, okay? So I walk into the head of this department for my major and was like, hey, I need a major. What is this? And she goes, oh, this is the up-and-coming thing. This is what all businesses want. They need people that can communicate. This is a great degree. Okay, sign me up. It was business classes, speech classes, writing classes, things that I was good at. So it made sense for me to do it. I'm in my senior year. I am about to graduate. I'm interviewing for jobs because baseball wasn't working out at that point. I knew I wasn't going to be playing baseball anymore. And I walk into my very first interview thinking, hey, I got a shot for this job. I get asked the question, so tell me, what is organizational communications? And I'm a deer in the headlights.
Yeah.
and I just finished the degree basically.
And these are the businesses who are going to give you a job because
correct.
of it, right?
And I'm like, well, you're supposed to know what it is. I was told that this is what you wanted, and I couldn't explain it very well. I fumbled it. I really did. Because I was caught so off guard by the question. And I actually did say to the guy, I'm like, I'll be honest with you, I was under the impression that like you would know what that is.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, not at all. And I'm like, so that was really eye-opening. And every interview I went on from that point on, it was the same thing.
And how much did your degree cost you? Are you an athlete? But I mean, let's say you had to pay $200,000.
I walked out of undergrad sitting at, because now, to be fair, I went out of state.
Yeah.
I did get partial scholarship for, I think I got like a 30 or 40% scholarship to help me with offsetting the out-of-state cost. I wasn't on scholarship my last year in school. So I took, like an ignorant kid, I took more student loans than I should have just to survive without having to get a job to finish up. I finished at $65,000 in student loan debt because I took...
How old were you?
22.
Imagine having $65,000 debt. I mean, that's the low end. Mm-hmm. You're $65,000 in debt before you even started.
I was.
That's insane.
I don't have to imagine it because I was. I legitimately was.
And here...
At 22.
Now... Flip it. Go. Sorry, finish your point.
Well, here's the thing. So and this was in 2004. I had interviewed for jobs. Mm-hmm. My first offer was $32,000 plus a small bonus incentive type job. So I think total I could have made maybe $40,000. And this was 2004. Every offer from that point on went down. So I was losing offers, right?
Yeah.
I knew that the military offered student loan repayment. So that's basically how I dug myself out of the hole. But I know plenty of people that still have that mountain of student loan debt that they basically have never been able to scratch the surface at because of how high the payments are, because of the debts, whatever, you name it. Versus an example of someone that I know today who is about to turn 18, if he's not already turned 18, started his own landscaping business at 12 years old. Cut his neighbor's yards for a few years, then turned it into an actual viable business when he got his driver's license, and is already making $6-figure a year at 18 years old.
Exactly.
And I know another kid who did the same deal. He started a semester of college. He was a football player. He got a scholarship for it, hated it, and was like, I'm out. Went to work, and at 19 years old was making $50,000-$60,000 a year. And what's the moral there is people have realized that institution. So look at it from the institution standpoint, right? If I'm a college, what I want to do is I want to add as many products as possible, degrees, as many, and they're going to sound fancy and new age, and they're going to change the world, but they mean absolutely fuck all. Yeah.
And I'm going to bring as many people in, and they're going to go get student loans to pay me, and then the government's going to subsidize me from this end, and I'm sitting here making, because it's like the medical industry. It's no longer about education; it's about money.
It is about money. Well, and here's the other thing for me. Like I play baseball, right? And I love the game of baseball. To this day, I love the game. It's amazing. It's fun. It's just, there's so many life transferable skills to it. But having said that, baseball also set me back 20 years.
Yeah.
And one of the struggles that I had, so I wanted to keep playing ball. Well, how do you keep playing ball? You either play professionally or you go to college.
Yeah.
Well, I screwed up and didn't get it. What I've got drafted, I don't really know, but I was told that I was going to had some teams that were wanting to watch me play to get drafted to play professionally. I got arrested at a party for drinking underage, so I went to jail, got suspended for 3 games. No pro teams got to see me play. I never got drafted, so I go to college. And then I get these student loans. Well, now on the backside of it, I'm like, well, how do I pay for these? So I go to the military because I get the student loan repayment. Now the interest kicked in, and by the time the Army repayment was going, they were up to $90,000. Wow. I think it was like 95.
Just on interest?
Yeah, because it was accruing daily.
That's insane.
So I was up to like 90 or 95,000. The Army kicked in. They paid a good chunk. But even when I got out of the Army, I still had $30,000 worth of debt. I deployed to Afghanistan, and I made money as a civilian to help pay off all these debts.
Yeah.
Okay, so now fast forward, I'm in the corporate world. I have the post 9/11 GI Bill, so I had to go serve and deploy 3 times to get these education benefits. And there's mental aspect that was wreaked havoc on me for that. I decide, well, I'm going to get a master's degree because I'm in the corporate world thinking it's going to make me more attractive for a promotion, possibly make more money, whatever. Yeah. So I use the education benefit. I get the master's degree. It's in leadership, essentially, business leadership. And I go to HR department and say, hey, I'm just curious. I'm about to finish this master's program. Does that equate to more pay? Nope, sure doesn't. And they basically said, great job, congratulations, get in this company. We don't even require, at this point, they had changed their requirements. They didn't even require a bachelor's degree to promote and go through all this. I know people that promoted to some of the highest levels within the company, no college education.
Wow.
And I'm like, on one hand, you go, well, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
Why should that person get the job whenever they didn't do what I did? But at the same time, I'm like,
But are they more skilled than you? Probably, because they actually had on-hands experience.
Yeah.
And this rolls back to exactly what I'm talking about, right? So you go through all of these mechanisms that they tell you is the way to be successful, right? None of them are going to lead you where they think they're going to lead you, because it's a format of control. And there's always it's a business, right? So something interesting is happening right now. So RFK wants to roll back on SNAP payments, which is food stamps, right? So if you have a SNAP card and you go in, what they want to do is they want to limit what people can buy. So they want to take out any sugary drinks and any sweets. Now, as someone who believes and knows how bad that is for you, I like, okay, here's my take on it. And most people would agree, right? When I say most people, I'm like 90% of the population is going to agree with this. If you are in a position, right, if you are in a position where you require a SNAP card and you need to be on food stamps, that food is subsidized by us.
Yeah.
If that food is subsidized by us, you should be given a range of foods that you eat that do not benefit these other companies that attribute to your health to get you to a position that you can buy your own food.
Yeah.
If you're going to be buying sugary drinks, you should use your own money, right? You shouldn't use someone else's money. Here's the problem. $4 billion is how much soda companies make of SNAP cards.
Wow.
$4 billion. So now what's happening is those lobbyists have started going into overdrive.
Well, yeah, because you're hurting their pocket.
Because if this goes through, it hurts them on their bottom line.
Yeah, totally.
The interesting part about that is, right, all these right-leaning influencers who've been pumping out and calling out them, there's a whole group of them who get paid, and all of a sudden they're putting out the exact same talking points. No, Donald Trump drinks Diet Coke, so we shouldn't do this to people. There should be freedom of choice. All these something, exact same talking points. All of them were paid off. Right? What does that show you? That shows you that any side, no matter which one you choose, is fallible. They're human beings. Money changes people's outcomes. So,
totally.
When we talk about someone that comes in, and you mentioning previously Democrats, I agree with you. They're stupid in one sense, right? And I'm saying that in the most loving, kindest way, is because they're so captured by what they've been told without verifying it, and they're so stuck into an ideology. It's like a cult, and it happens on all sides. That they're unwilling to listen to any reasonable argument or any reasonable logic which could counteract their belief system. It's like going to someone, and it's like going to someone 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, who is Christian, right? And if their entire belief system is lined in this, and now all of a sudden, make it 500 years ago, and all of a sudden showing them, listen, there's this universe. The Earth isn't the center of the universe. There's planets out there, there's stars, you can do this, and all of a sudden you're breaking their dynamic of what the world was and their understanding of it.
Yeah.
And in these people's minds, what happens is there's so much justification in their minds of what they're doing that there's no conversation. They are so captured. It's like being in a cult. The part where this becomes interesting is that's not a Democrat thing. That's not their side thing. It's a people thing.
Yeah, I think one of the things for me, is common sense and stepping back and using your logical brain on things. I'll use the example of COVID. Sam and I were just talking about this last night. In COVID, they said, there was actually a restaurant. We were actually talking about this. This happened to us. We didn't really wear a whole lot of masks. Yeah. We go to this restaurant, and they wanted us to wear a mask when we got in and wear a mask to the table. When you sat down at the table, you could take your mask off to eat.
That's logical to me. COVID is only at a certain height.
Correct.
And if you're eating, it leaves you alone.
Yeah, right. But that's my point is make that shit make sense. It just doesn't. It doesn't make any sense to me to say you have to wear this mask to get to your table. When you get there, you can take it off and then eat, and then you have to put it back on when you leave. Well, if it's airborne like that, I'm going to get it regardless, right? Yeah. It just the things that we did as a society and as a culture during that time frame, and that's what I'm getting at is I've always been the type of person, and I don't know where I get this from. I don't know if it's because of what I went through as a child. I think it largely is that. I will never be one to sit back and swallow my tongue when things don't make sense or add up. If you ask me, this is my opinion. I've said this for a long time. I've said this since probably high school. If we never ask the question why, we'll be a communist country. If we 100%. Never push back on the rules, we'll be a communist country. Yeah. We have to push back on the narrative. We have to push back on the rules because it's our duty as citizens of this country to say when things just don't make sense. And that's exactly why Donald Trump just got elected.
And if you make that statement, right, so if anybody in a form of authority, right, and it can be anybody, it could be a cop who stops you on the side of the road, right, if he walks up to you and you ask a question, a reasonable question, like you're looking at the officer, go, "Hi, officer, why did you stop me?"
Yeah.
And he starts screaming and shouting at you, right, and won't answer your question, starts naming you names and calling you things, he's probably doing something illegal.
Well, here's my take on that, right? I think that's real. That's just a real scenario, okay? That happens. And as somebody that's in the military, I know the ranks of the officers that walk up to me. So this is how I would do it. Hey, Sergeant, I would see his name, Sergeant Bobby.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what I did wrong?
Yeah.
He overreacts. And at this point, I'm not going to get hostile with him because remember,
I agree with what you're saying, yeah.
Hear me out. I'm not because people do get hostile with these guys. I'm not going to get hostile with him. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to accept the ticket that's given to me, and then I'm taking it to court.
Because you have a process.
Correct. Okay, so that's where I think where people go wrong is they try to match the energy and say, this officer is obviously out of line, pull a cell phone recording out, whatever else, accept the ticket, take it to court because he's probably not going to show up to court anyways.
You make a great point there. I was having a conversation with Robbie Donofrio earlier today, and he was explaining to me, like in jiu-jitsu and also in certain aspects there, he goes, the biggest mistake a person makes is when someone comes at you, right? And someone comes to fight with you, someone's attacking you, goes, when you match their energy, you're going to lose.
Totally.
Goes, you have to stay in control. Being in control 100%. Means being calm. Now, Robbie, because he's so good at, he was telling me the story the other day, he says he's so good at his jiu-jitsu that it's very rare that he finds someone on his level to test him. So he goes, I don't even burn calories when I'm doing this. So it's like, he kind of moves. So he's telling me, like, I need to find a different training regime because this does not train me anymore because I am so I'm so advanced on my level that if I don't find someone on my level, it's not a lot of work for me, which we can attest to, but the guy literally rolls you around in circles, right? But what he said stuck with me is intensity.
I mean, we're both like over 6 foot, or over 240 pounds, and he handled us like we were fucking Twinkies.
Yeah,
I mean, it was crazy.
And he makes a good point in that, and it should be something you should apply to everything in life, right? When someone comes with you with aggressive, strong intensity, this can be road rage, it could be altercations, it could be an altercation with a police officer. If you remain calm and in control, right? And not in control of the situation. You can't control the situation. You can control yourself.
That's right.
And you remain calm. Yours is the logical step.
Yeah.
The logical step is, well, if I overstep my bounds with this officer, he has the right to take action. Right.
Yes,
so I'm not going to put hands on him. I'm not going to start argument with him. I'm going to listen to what he says. I will respectfully, if I don't agree, and again, it's not even about an argument. If he says, you ran a red light. Officer, I don't believe I ran a red light. Do you have this on camera? Have you caught anything? No, you'll do that in court. No problem. Give me the ticket. I'll take it up in court.
I got pulled over. I was in a corporate job. I used to have to drive to West Palm, and I would always get up real early in the morning to go because I didn't like staying extra nights in the hotel if I didn't have to. So I got up at I think it was 3 in the morning, maybe even earlier than that. And I get up on 60, State Road 60. We know that one to head down towards Yeehaw Junction. And I had the lights flipped on me. And the guy, I was like, what was I doing? Because I was very cautious, with that. I was driving for the company, so I didn't want to get ticketed or anything like that. So I'd get penalized for that in my company.
Yeah.
So I knew how fast I was going. I was driving the speed limit because I had my cruise set to the speed limit. And the guy pulls me over, and he was kind of had the chip on his shoulder a little bit, and he just walks up to me. Now, mind you, I'm in business attire. I was in a dress shirt, slacks. My jacket was hanging in the back of my suit jacket with tie.
Yeah.
And you could literally see my GPS screen showing West Palm. And he walks up to me, and he's starts giving me attitude right out of the gate. I recognized the rank and the name, and it just said, hey, officer or sergeant, whatever his name was. was very respectful, but he was basically what he was searching for. He tried to tell me I was speeding. He tried to trick me. He was searching to see if into admitting it, and tried to see. He said he paced me because I asked him how fast was I going, and I said, "Officer, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I have my cruise set to this speed." Anyway, I was very tactful and respectful with it. He ended up coming back up and gave me a warning. He said, "Hey, I'm actually looking for drunk drivers, and you're not drunk." I'm like, "No." And at that point, like, I was still drinking occasionally, but I never drank during the week. Yeah. And I was like, "Yeah, no, I haven't had anything since last weekend." I was like, and even then, it was a couple beers. Like, that's not something. And he recognized it, was fine with it. At that point, it changed his tone, but it was because I was respectful, in my opinion.
How you adapt to that situation. So if you know, and this is again, is if you have that intensity and you try and match his, you're going to lose.
I'm going to get a ticket.
He's the authority figure. Unfortunately, whether you like it or not, and you go, "You work for me and I pay your salary," that bullshit's not going to get you very far.
It doesn't do you any good.
And I want to bring that back to what we were talking about the different ideologies, because what happens is, I feel people are always trying to match intensity. Mm-hmm. You know, like if they're like 5-year-old kids. You know, tit for tat. You do this, I'll do that. Mm-hmm. That shit doesn't work, right? And one of the reasons that I feel the Republican Party has taken a step up in, is there's a couple of things. First of all, realize that the team Trump's put behind him are all Generation X. Right,
which I love.
Generation X is a different generation. We did not come from, we lived in the old world where there was
Gen
no
X
technology.
And, older millennials.
Yeah,
I love it.
So that's the first part.
True leaders put young people in their steps behind them and train and teach them.
100%.
I mean, imagine being Trump's son. Like, how cool is it to be 18 years old, right next to your dad in his 70s, in his prime of what he knows, and you're seeing that firsthand. But Trump's also putting all these Gen X and millennials in place to learn and gain these experiences.
So I see benefits to what I'm doing, but a part that people always have to look to, that I always say is, no matter how much you like Trump, right? And as a human being, I think he's a good human being. I really listen to him.
I have to.
I didn't like the way he talks. I understand it better now. I've matured into understanding.
He's a New Yorker at heart.
But besides that, there's method to his madness. Like when my brain turned, right, is when I read The Art of the Deal.
I read that too.
He's literally playing the book, right?
And I don't remember if it's in that book, but I've read one of the big things with him that was kind of a knock. It was like, he was a Democrat of the past. He played the system to his favor. He donated to the campaigns that were charged to help him with what he needed to get done.
None of that really kind of resonated. It, as you said, it's inconsequential, whatever you want to say. There was one part that really resonated, is they spoke to one of his ex-wives, right? I can't remember if she was a wife or she was someone who dated him early in his career. And she said, his superpower, right? His superpower is he can sit with someone and within minutes, he can find their weakness, their weak spot. Truly in their personality, their whatever it is. He can isolate that weak spot and he starts using it and manipulating, right? Now, again, regardless of which side you're on, you have to look at people in power and you have to take them for what they are and you have to take them in all. I'll be the first person, if he does if he goes off the rails and does something wrong, which I don't think he will, but if he does, I'll be the first person to call it out.
Yeah.
Right. So would you.
Yeah.
The point being is we have to get back to a place as people, right?
But he's evolved and learned a lot, and he's not, like, no presidential candidate or president will ever be perfect. Like when McCain died back, and I don't know if you remember this, but when McCain died, he was kind of going tit for tat with McCain's daughter about him, and I'm like, I think he lost a lot of people at that point, because it's like, the dude served his country. He was a Vietnam vet. Let him go, right? Like, he served, he did his thing, perfect or not. No, none of us are, and I think he lost a lot of points there. But my point, he evolved in this, like, however many years, and he's gotten way better at just like spitting out the bullshit. Died.
Like, he's not the same person. But regardless of that is. Regardless of your standpoint, I want to take it back to Layman's Lab in our closing. The reason I bring up all these things, right, politics, what's happening kind of in the administration, current events where we are, right, is the purpose of what we do, why we're sitting here, is we want to have open-ended conversations with as many different people as possible.
For sure.
Regardless of their belief system. I want to hear from people that don't follow the same lines I do, so I can understand perspective, whether I agree with it or not. But maybe I can gain some knowledge. As you said, you can pick up something from anything.
Yes.
Right? And maybe there's something to learn. And in that process, truly what I'm hoping for the Layman's Lab is, and I think Joe Rogan talks about it, he says, I'm really hoping that people resonate and understand and start having more conversations like this outside of a podcast.
And I also want to clarify something too, because I put a very broad blanket Democrats are stupid statement out. But here's my thing. I can look at an opinion that you have and think it's stupid, but it doesn't mean I disrespect you as a human being.
Yeah, that's an important part.
It is, because
it's a very important part.
I know plenty of people that have different beliefs than me, whether it's religion, whether it's politics, whether it's anything. I don't agree with it. I think some of them are kind of stupid. I do. But at the end of the day, it's your choice.
The only time it's going to affect me is when you try and force your opinion or force your belief or force what you're doing on me.
Well, I'll give another one. I know, I can't remember where I saw this one, but like there was schools that had litter boxes for kids in their school.
Yeah.
I think that's stupid. And I think that's more like child abuse.
It is stupid, but listen, there's way more that we won't get in today, which is a huge rabbit hole, which I'd rather bring a guest on for us, because those things are being done for very specific reasons. There's a reason Europe is falling. There's a reason that they opened our borders when Biden was in. There's a reason for it. It's a control factor.
Agreed, but my whole reason for saying it is like, I can tell you that this is stupid, but it doesn't mean that I don't respect you as a human being or care about you as a human being, is what I'm trying to say. And I think we have to call some of the stupidity out, because, again, like I said, if we don't push back on the rules and the narrative, we'll be a communist country.
And I agree with you.
And that's my ultimate point.
You can't just take these things, especially when these things are so... You can see the damage. You can see the damage that it's doing to children. You can see the damage that it does within those groups.
Healthy debate is good. We need healthy debate. You and I can't agree, and we don't. You and I as friends don't agree on every topic. 100%. We have differing of opinions, but guess what it does? When we disagree on something, we come to a better place as a result of talking about it, as respecting colleagues and friends and whatever business partners. Like, it makes us better.
Yeah. And one of the reasons, right, and maybe this will change as we go forward, but one of the reasons that I will never have someone who is pro-trans, pro-LGBTQ, and let's take the Q, the B, and the L out of that, because I think they may mash this together to kind of ruin those, ruin people in that line. I've got an awesome real estate agent that I want to bring on, who was a cop in Los Angeles or in California, and he's now a real estate agent here, Levi. Amazing guy, right? And because he's right leaning, he's gay, right? He's married, but have it from a perspective of someone who's looking at it from the different side and going, listen, this is not what I'm for. Yeah. And you kind of speak to them, you kind of realize, listen, these are just human beings. Right. But the point I'm getting at is, the reason I won't have someone who's trans on you is because, and this is the same reason I won't have a crazy vegan on you. It's the same reason I won't have a crazy carnivore on you. I don't want someone who's going to sit at the side of the table spitting at me, telling me that everyone else is wrong because they don't follow what you want. Yeah. The minute you tell me and you start spitting on and shitting on someone else's right of life, right of choice, freedom of choice, right? Freedom of choice doesn't mean you get to choose for the rest of us. This is the problem the trans community took in.
I agree.
I'm going to change what everyone does so that you do what I want to do. No.
All right.
We're not going to change the whole world just to suit you. We're going to adapt to the world in a format that has been like this for thousands of years.
This country was founded largely because of religious persecution. So the settlers here originally were fleeing religious persecution. So you came here, and the whole concept is that like you could practice and do what you wanted to do, but it doesn't mean I have to. Like it
can't overtake the rights of the next.
I'm finishing up American Primeval, however you say that. It's about the Mormon movement back way in the day. It's the idea that, like, I don't align with Mormons. That's not something I want, but they had their place. They had their ability to do what they wanted to do.
They had the freedom to live their lives the way they do within the confines of a logical societal system where everybody gets along and everybody works in with good law enforcement, well-enforced laws, good judges. Right. Those are the things we have to keep in. The constitutional aspect of the United States, that constitution is the one thing that keeps us aligned. Totally. That alignment is super important.
Yep.
And going back to that is what the Layman's Lab is. We're all about, listen, I'm very much in touch with spirituality and being intuitive, listen to your gut. I'm just as ingrained into logic and give me reasoning and tell me where it's going. But inevitably, everybody has a right to state their opinion on something. Mm-hmm. You don't have the right to enforce your opinion on someone else, but you have the right to state it. You have the right to, and I want to do that in the most respectful, conscientious manner, whereby we can actually share ideas and information. As you said, question everything.
Yeah.
believe nothing. Sit down and really go through everything and really gauge it. I want to know, did we land on the moon? And I want to be able to, do I care? No. Does it change my day? No. But it's an interesting conversation.
It is.
Right? And on that, there's an AI program designed specifically to pick up fake images. Right? By pixelation, dimensions, measurements. And so what they did is they pumped in every single moon landing photo.
They're all fake.
It says they're all fake. Interesting concept. Does it change my day today? No.
Okay, but it's a good conversation.
You know what I mean? Like I don't really care, but hey, that's an interesting conversation to have. This is why we do this.
Yeah.
So on that note is, remember everybody, 24th of May, we're going to have Ronnie Coleman. The episode will probably be up probably on the 25th, 26th. Go check out Metroflex's website. Tickets are on sale. You can buy tickets for each of the different events.
Sponsorships will be available too.
Yeah, we're going to send out some sponsorship letters. You know, there's sponsorship space we have on the podcast itself.
Yeah.
Let's all remember Ronnie Coleman has, you know, he's a big celeb. We're super excited to get him on, and we're gonna push this out to as many people as possible.
It's a great way to promote your business. So if you want to sponsor, hit us up. There's going to be tons and tons of people there.
Yeah.
And then of course the national reach with his platform alone. Like there's opportunities to get sponsorship.
And man, it's Ronnie Coleman. Like this is an icon. This is the icon. Like there's very few people I speak to who don't know who Ronnie Coleman is.
Yeah.
So yeah, on that note,
thanks for listening.
Offhand episode. Thanks for listening. Thank you, Kevin, as always.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Beautiful.